Good evening. You're with the late smoke. This is Mireille, and this is episode 36. So yeah, let me just set up my cameras and everything. I got a few people waiting. Hope you're excited. There we go. Let me turn a little bit that way. There we go. Maybe lower it a little bit. Sorry about that. Sometimes I'm prepared, sometimes I'm not. Today was a bit hectic, so bear with me a few seconds. I'll need to lower down my camera. There we go. I think that will do. I think it's much better now. So how is everyone? I've seen a bunch of people already in here. So there we go. I think we are ready to go. Exciting session today. Lots of stuff to talk about. As I promised last week, we're gonna have some session. I have a few whiskeys around. I'll try to pair them with a cigar. I haven't smoked the cigar, so it will be first time for me. So we'll improvise and see how the pairing will go. So yeah, then first we're gonna talk about a little bit about the whiskey. Then I'm gonna talk about on the news section. There's quite a few interesting news. Then we'll carry on talking about the whiskey and the pairing, and then we're gonna talk about some cigars probably from my selection. See how the time going. And in the meantime, every question, anything you want to ask, guys, just feel free to shoot it there. In the meantime, yeah, I'm about to cut and lit. I haven't lit the cigar because it's only a Robusto 5x50, but as I promised in the banner, in the thumbnail, cigar I'm smoking tonight is Escobar. Escobar cigars, they completely revamped their portfolio. They used to do completely different cigars. I've never been massively impressed. I mean, I've smoked the Maduro and the Habano before. They were all right, but I would probably stop there. Last year in Dortmund, they announced this completely new revamping line, a new factory. Now they're made by AJ Fernandez. Another interesting thing on the cigars, they are owned or maybe co-owned by the rap legend Nas. The name Escobar, of course, is a little bit controversial, but yeah, we'll give it a go. So the Habano I'm having, Nicaraguan Habano, Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, not Nicaraguan, Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, Nicaraguan Honduran fillers. So medium strength probably. It's nice smell of the cigar. Look a little bit fragile. I mean, if you know what I mean. Sometimes the cigar, the wrapper look not very thick. So quite loose draw, but it is what it is. I've got that pepper on the cold draw. So if you guys smoke AJ Fernandez cigars quite a lot, every time you do a cold draw on the cigar, you will get pepper. Literally will hit you in the throat without even being lit. So make few for puffs. I mean, it's not a puff because it's not lit, but few quick draws, and literally let the air go through your throat, and you feel that tingle of pepperness. This is literally the signature of AJ Fernandez, in my opinion. So let's remove this ribbon. I like when people put ribbon on the foot. This is super helpful. In my opinion, more cigars should have this one because that protects the foot. Even if you drop the cigar by accident or anything, most likely the damage will not occur on the cigar. And there we go. Start yawning as usual. So yeah, the cigar, quite a big chunky veins. Again, very light. I haven't weighted it, probably about 10-12 grams. Yeah, I have matches, but okay, let me use matches. In the meantime, gents, ladies, I don't know if there's ladies watching. Tell me what you're smoking tonight. What you prepared. I put a cigar on purpose, see if anyone have the cigar, maybe smoke it with me, but it's not a cigar you can find very easy. Maybe the Epicurean and few people from the States, maybe they'll be able to find it. So anyone drinking, smoking? I'm not gonna toast the cigar, I'm gonna just lit it, so because toasting will take much more time and I need to talk about the stuff. A very loose draw. This will be a very quick smoke, guys. Okay, let me use my lighter to finish it. Until I'm waiting my cigar to open up and have few puffs. I mean, it's a massive smoke as well. Um, as I promised in the thumbnail, we're gonna I choose for the today's pairing something a little bit controversial, or at least I think it's controversial because of my experience in the industry. And I want to talk about blended whiskies. For a lot of people, especially based in UK, in Scotland, especially the new generation, they sworn by the single malt. They don't want to touch blended whiskies and that kind of stuff. But first, let me see if I can explain what's blended whiskies, what's a single malt, and stuff like that. So, in the Scottish category, we're going to talk about the Scotch whiskey. I mean, maybe some other day I'll do it for bourbons and other stuff. But the Scotch whiskey, first of all, to be called whiskey, need to have only three ingredients: water, yeast, and barley. So those are the or grain. Let's say it need to be grain. Um, so as a lower tier category, or let's start the other way around because we're going to talk about the blended stuff. The highest tier, two people smoking Oliver, very nice. The highest tier Scottish whiskey you can get is a single malt, single cask. Um, Single cask means the whiskey is coming only from one barrel. And if it's a cask strength, most likely there's no added water. So whatever the cask give you, that's it. You bottle it on that one. Very, very often, even if not 99.9%, the strength is not exact number. It's always decimal, like a point something. This is usually for a cask strength. So this is your single malt. Need to be malted barley, water, and yeast, minimum for 3 years of age before become a whiskey. So the first 3 years and 1 day, it's not whiskey, it's something else based on whiskey. To be called whiskey, 3 years and 1 day aged in a ex bourbon barrels. So this is by the Scottish law. The organization which control that one, 3 years and 1 day ex bourbon barrels, malted barley, yeast, water. This is for a single malt. So then going lower as a category, we can have single grain whiskey, which in Scotland I don't think is very common. Actually, it's more common in Japan and other places like Thailand. Single grain could be whiskey made from one type of grain without mixing with different. So theoretically, the single malt is single grain as well. But they don't call it that way. They call it single malt because the single grain usually can be rice, corn, rye, that kind of stuff, but need to be only one type of grain. So lower than that one is what we call blended whiskies. Blended whiskies, there are a few different categories. So blended whiskey, if you just call or looking for a blended whiskey without any other specification, mean most of the time the whiskey in the bottle is being collected from few different distilleries, and also my include few different grains, not only malted barley. So it's basically a big mishmash. You get in whiskey from wherever you want, put it in the barrels or in the bottles, and this is your blended whiskey. With the single malt, need to be one distillery. That's the big difference. Blended whiskey can be multiple distilleries. Single malt need to be one distillery and only malted barley. Also, with the blended whiskies, you can also have one distillery, but you can use different grains. Still class as a blended whiskey. Um, Again, blended whiskey, either different distilleries, either different grains. Both ways called blended whiskey. Sometimes on the bottles you have blended malt. What is a blended malt? Only use only malted barley, but from different distilleries. Every time you mix the whiskey from the distillery, forget about the the wording single malt. And now I have a bottle here which will be very controversial, but it's classed as a blended whiskey. You'll find out why later. So I think it's quite clear for the people who doesn't know. I mean, probably all of you guys know, but I just want to make that clarification. Some people ask me what's the difference. So tonight we're going to concentrate on the blended whiskies. So we're not going to drink any single malt. We're not going to go for the expensive stuff. Well, some of the blended stuff can be expensive, but that's another topic. Blended whiskies usually were very popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s in the last century. Some of the biggest blended whiskies, I mean, probably I don't need to tell you this, they're big even now. Johnny Walker, Ballantines, Grant's, Famous Grouse, all kind of different stuff. So what they do, they basically, for example, Johnny Walker, it's a distillery which in some of the bottling, especially if you go for some of the expensive releases, they have like 20 distilleries in there, but because they literally have agreement with many of them, they own quite a few, so they can mix whatever they want. And to be honest, in the cigars, more often you see blended stuff, different countries, different origins, different factories, instead of like pure single origin cigars. That's very uncommon. But the whiskies, again, maybe the cigars in 50 years will be different, but the whiskies, very often you see blended stuff, and it's not expensive because you can buy whiskey you can get whiskey from different distilleries, not very expensive, and if you have a good master blender, you just mix it and make it right. But the people who are master blenders of the blended whiskey, in my opinion, are the biggest masterminds in the whiskey, because they need to replicate the same blend using whiskey every year after every year coming from a barrels. I mean, even if they use the same aging process, barrel is a living thing, and the whiskey breathes in the barrel. And every barrel can taste differently, even if it's the same whiskey, same time, same age, but the barrel is different, so the whiskey will be different. And the people who blend the whiskey, they're crazy. It's same as the cigars. A master blender of cigar to replicate the same cigar twice is ridiculous. My cigar wants to stop burning. That's why I'm keep puffing like a crazy. But probably construction issue in that one. I can tell you, even I haven't dropped the ash, but there will be massive hole after that. I can just feel it. It's not very hot, but it just doesn't want to burn. See if I can solve that one. So, after the 70s, after the 80s, the single malt start getting more popular. Of course, brands like Macallan, Glenfiddich, Glenfarclas, some of the bigger animals, Balvenie, etc., etc. They're one of the top producers. They exclusively and mostly produce single malt. They don't touch with other stuff. Of course, sometimes they sell bottles and they sell casks for some of the distilleries which blend them, but the blended stuff are not in their game. Some of those distilleries, they're not even allowing people who buying casks from them to release them as a single malt. Big example. I'm going to talk about a little bit later because I have a very good example. But blended whiskey, as Andrew mentioned, they get very overlooked because people, yeah, well, the hype is on the single malt, all the all the big specialists on the whiskey, all the bartenders, whatever. Most of the people all usually go for the single malts. That's why blended is a little bit overlooked and supermarket style whiskey. Tonight I have 3 different blends which are not supermarket style, and they're phenomenal blends. But very different by their own, very crazy projects, and those are one of my favorite blends. And they don't need to be also super expensive. I mean, some of the blends are expensive, but not all. And yeah, my cigar is dead. So let me see if I can drop that first ash. There we go. I mean, I think I was right this time. There's a big hole in the middle. So, I don't know if you can see. It's not gonna focus obviously because of my big head. But there's a hole in the middle. We didn't start very well with the cigar, so let's hope the whiskey will change that. I mean, as I mentioned before, that brand used to have issues before. Now they changed the factory, but looks like that doesn't change the issues. Okay, so we're gonna start with the first whiskey. The cigar obviously have some issues. The cigar so far, that specific pepperness, very earthy, very tarmacy, leathery. Nothing too excited. I'm hoping the whiskey to change that. So what we have in as a first whiskey, it's probably what changed my mind about the blended whiskey. I mean, I used to have the same perception because I didn't drink that much whiskey. I was also always thinking blended whiskey, nah, I don't want to drink that one. But this was the first blend which I get in love with, and I always have a bottle with in my home. So what we have here, it's actually not a scotch. I mean, I was thinking, should I get 3 different scotches or should I include something else? So this is actually English whiskey. But they're on the border with Scotland, so their actually climate is more Scottish than some of the Scottish whiskies. So this is made by Lakes. Lakes is an English distillery which is already about 12, 13 years on the market, and it's called One Fine Blend. And the One Fine Blend started his life as an ex-bourbon finish, which I'm not particularly big fan. But they also do expressions with different stuff like orange wine, and this specifically is the sherry cask. So this one is being finished in a Oloroso, which for me it's a pure hazelnuts, and also PX. PX is more of a sultanas and dried fruits. So when you get in sherries and when you see a bottle finished in the sherry, always think Oloroso, very nutty, hazelnutty, maybe almonds. Pedro Jimenez or PX, very dry fruits, sultanas, raisins, that kind of fruit. So this whiskey, it's fine. They call it blended whiskey. So this is not a blended malt. If you remember what I was talking in the beginning, blended whiskey. So this one have whiskeys from different distilleries from Speyside and Islay, and their own distillery, of course, whiskey, their own distillation, their own concentrate from lakes. So 3 different regions: England, Speyside, and Islay, and also have malted barley whiskey and single grain whiskey, which I don't know what grain they use, but I would presume wheat, most likely. I don't think they do rye or anything like that. So there's a different grains and different distilleries. So this is the you can't get more blended than this one. Maybe, I mean, even in different countries you have English and Scottish whiskey as well. If you haven't tried that whiskey, highly recommend it. I think it's around £40 at least, something like that. Maybe 45, depend where you buy it. 46.6% as well. Very, very unusual to have blended whiskies over 40%, because when you do blended whiskey, especially not an expensive blended whiskey, you want volume. You don't care that much on the specific maybe strength, quality. Maybe you care more about the volume. That's why I water it down to 40%. Chill filtration, coloring, coloring, whatever. This one, no added color, no chill filtration. I don't think Lakes produce whiskey under 46%. The color, as you can see, very reddish orangey. Typical sherry, very heavy sherry whiskey. I mean, the bottle even look more reddish than that one. Um, Nose, lots of sweetness, predominantly fruits. I don't get any of the nuttiness here. So the first sip, as I mentioned, the on the nose you can't expect there's a lot of oloroso here. On the nose you can't pick the oloroso. There's no nuttiness. There's no almonds. There's no hazelnuts. But when you drink it, the first sip is literally nuts, like even like Brazilian nuts. Not that much of a almonds or hazelnuts, more of a Brazilian nuts, cashew nuts, and then the sweetness hitting after that. So now I cannot taste that leathery stuff from that cigar. And now when I have a smoke after the sip, I have a very interesting sweetness which wasn't here before. Most likely my palate is influenced by the whiskey. But the whiskey is long time gone. It's not in my mouth. I can still feel the leather now in the cigar, but it's not that leathery and earthy. It's more leathery and sweeter, like a sweet leather. I don't know if that thing exists. Um, it's very interesting. I like it so far. So we're gonna leave that whiskey on the side. I'm gonna carry on with the usual stuff, and in the meantime, I'm gonna have maybe one or two another sips, and in some point, I'm gonna show you what's the second whiskey we're gonna do today. In the meantime, any questions, guys, shoot in a message. Adnan already asked a question. I think that question was asked last week with the recent news that Europe is planning to increase the tobacco taxes. Shall we stock up long term? I mean, simple. I'm not gonna go crazy to explain crazy wild explanation in this one, but my simple answer will be the cigar will never go cheaper. Every moment is a good moment for stock up. If you have the money, if you have the budget, if you find a good deal, stock up. On the other side, lots of cigars probably wouldn't be good enough to be smoked after 5-10 years because there's no guarantee. I've talked about that many times. There's no guarantee the cigar will be super good in 5 years, in 10 years, in 7 years, or whatever. So there's no right or wrong answer here. Maybe if you have your favorite cigar and you smoke it every day, every week, yeah, stock a few boxes, stock several boxes. But if you want to stock cigars for which you're curious how they're going to smoke after a few years, probably not wise. Um, Also, I don't think this European increase will affect UK. I don't know if where you're buying. I mean, I'm not sure where you are based. UK will not be affected by this European increase. We're not part of the European Union. And even with the European Union increased prices, they will not even go close towards the UK prices. So UK tobacco tax is about 400 and something pounds. The maximum increase in Europe will go to 120 euro per kilogram. So you can see 400 pounds per kilogram and 120 euro, 140 euro per kilogram. It's way below us. So it might have an effect in some European countries, which already have small, quite high taxes. In other countries like maybe Andorra, Gibraltar, Spain, that will have more effect. But stocking up, it's up to you. I don't stock up. I have enough. Obviously, I sometimes when I see a good deal, maybe I buy a box or two, share it with friends. But stock for my stash, I don't know how crazy deal that need to be. I don't know. Maybe if I see Cuiva Robusto on £20, I'll buy them. But that need to be crazy bargain, and I don't know who will sell it that cheap. Another question for Anan: is the temperature raising does affect the cigars? Short term, no. Yes. Long term, yes. Um, if the temperature stay high for a long term period, I mean maybe classes long term week, 2 weeks, maybe 10 days and above. If the temperature doesn't go below 27, 28 for 10 days, I would start have little concerns. What's going to happen if it's too humid? Um, you might start growing mold. And no one wants mold. It's mold going with the humidity. temperature also can affect it. Also, if you have lots of cigars with which you're not sure where you buy, not from proper shops which you trust, they might have larvas of the tobacco beetle, and those larvae start hatching up over 18, 19, 20 degrees if it's a longer period. So you might develop some tobacco beetles. Um, I don't think anything else can happen on the cigars. I mean, in Cuba at the moment it's 30 degrees. They don't use humidors. So yeah, they might have problems with the beetles, but if you're sure you don't have a larvas, um, not much you can happen. Um, More issue you can have if it's very very cold and you decide to smoke, then the temperature change will be drastic. But if it's too hot and you decide to smoke the cigar from the hottest humidor, should be fine. Just be careful on the mold and the beetles. Maybe separate the cigars to smaller boxes, so if you have contamination in one boxes, not to affect the others. Um, Mold, if you open quite often your humidor, maybe fresh air and that kind of stuff, it should be fine theoretically. Again, unless it's like 75% humidity, 80% humidity, which is way too much. And with the hot weather, obviously the all the fungus start raising, grow up, etc., etc. So hope that answer. Um, right. In the meantime, I'm gonna go for the first news for today. It's a release, so that means we're gonna rant a little bit. There was quite a few releases. I was thinking to rant more, but I stopped on only this release because this is fun. The release is about the new Cohiba Spectre 2024 in US. So that's not a Cuban Cohiba. That's the STG General Cohiba. Maybe the American guys will probably see them already. So the General Cigar call the people behind the non-Cuban Cohiba. Every few years they release in their high-end, top-end, whatever, ultra premium, whatever you can call it, Cohiba line called Spectre. Of course, this year they released again. Um, Release price is $150. I mean, this is more expensive than the standard Cohiba. Get the fact this is 6x52 Toro, which is close to Siglo 6. Yeah, I mean, in the Cuban side, there's no such a size as 6x52 in Cohiba, but let's say Cohiba Siglo 6 is the closest. And I don't think Cohiba Siglo 6 is still $150 as well. So they release in a cigar which is more expensive than Cohiba Siglo 6. Is it worth that money? 100% no. They also come in with it's some fancy, I don't know, tobacco from some fancy region in the Dominican Republic. It's all nonsense. Um, Even the craziness is that they lost the lawsuit versus the Cohiba name, and they decide to release expensive cigars. So I'll be very curious what's going to happen if they actually the court decide to tell them to change the name. Are they going to change on all previous existing cigars or stuff like that? But yeah, $150. So there was I think someone asked me a question, maybe not on the show, I'm not entirely sure. Someone asked me a question, what's my opinion if the Cuban embargo, let's say potentially, hypothetically, is being lifted and the Cuban cigars can be sold in the US? And I say, maybe that will affect some of the budget cigars. I mean, like Vigueros, Quinteros, all those super cheap Cuban cigars. I don't think will affect Cohiba or any of those. I mean, how many? I haven't seen. I text a couple people from American shops, which I have friends and connections in US. They say very rarely someone buy Cohiba, non-Cuban Cohiba in US, even not the Spectre one. Some of the other ones, which are not that expensive. Very, very rarely someone go for some of the premium ones. I mean, maybe they buy the Silencio, Black Dot, Red Dot, all those $9, $10, $12. But if you go for something more fancy, extremely rarely they sell them. Of course, big country, so I'm sure they will sell 600 boxes without a problem, maybe. But if Cuba importing their Cohibas, Trinidads, and all other stuff, do you think people will buy them? No, at least I don't think. Maybe someone from curiosity will buy one off or something like that. But when he realizes the cigar is not smoking, it's plugged. It's not crazy phenomenal as they expect. Because, I mean, there's always controversial. Are the Cuban cigars good to be smoked now? Are they need to be aged? I mean, everyone have an opinion on this one. Imagine an American folk buy, I don't know, let's not go for Cohiba, buy Partagas D4, and this is cigar advertised as a full body. Um, the guy used to smoke, let's say, Espinosa and Black Label and that kind of stuff, and he buy Partagas D4. Disappointment number one, it's a very quick smoke for a Robusto, 45 minutes, unless you get very fully packed one. So maybe you can avoid disappointment number one. Disappointment number two, the cigar is not strong at all. Not compared to Roma Craft and Black Label and any of those strong cigars. Um, Number three, he might have issues with the draw. And in most of the American cigars, they don't have issues with the draw. Yeah, they might have a tunneling and stuff like that, but issue with the draw, very, very unusual. So this gentleman or lady might start thinking, what's happened now? I pay so D4, what would be $40, $30, $40. I pay $30, $40 for this cigar, and the cigar sucks. I have so much disappointment. So I don't think this guy will ever buy again that kind of cigar. So that's my think on the what's going to happen if the embargo is lifted. I don't think Cuba will sell much more than what they sell it now. Um, Maybe they will focus some cigars to the US, but they're not going to sell. Unless there's some agreements for a very cheap prices, which I don't think will happen. So yeah, my rant here is why you need to release another $150 just to compete with the Cuban copycats. Because obviously Cohiba releasing so expensive cigar. I mean, Esplendido is like £700 in UK. Obviously, this is way far from 700, but still $150 for a Dominican cigar. Come on. Even Fuente very rarely released that kind of prices. I don't think even if Fuente released $150 cigar. Obviously, the Fuente and Padron collaboration was more than that, but that's it. And yeah, STG, Alta, this whatever General, they wants to see what's the market, maybe. Who knows? But it's a very, very crappy marketing on that one. Come on, metal tube, whatever, blah blah. I still don't know a single person which smoked the Spectre. Maybe Epicurean here can tell if he smoked some of the Spectres. Are they actually any good? Are they close to be called good cigars without looking the price tag? Because I don't know a person who buy that kind of cigars and smoke them. And obviously, I'm not that big blogger, so people can send me free stuff like that. So I can't know. Epicurus says no Spectre for me, not buying it. Well, I don't know who's buying them. Again, I'm asking maybe you get some of those from the PCA or they send it to you. I mean, I know we know half wheel, which usually gets sent stuff like that, but who knows? So that would be the first news. Let me have a sip of that beautiful whiskey. So nice. Super sweet. This will be the sweetest whiskey I have today. The other two won't be that sweet. So yeah, even the order of the whiskeys I choose is very weird. I very rarely do that order, but there's a reason behind, so I'll tell you later. The cigar, taste-wise, pretty linear. Doesn't do much development. The construction starts fixing now, so it's burning. There's a very flaky ash, honestly. My whole table is full of ash. The tunneling is almost corrected. There's a very small hole which is still there, but at least the cigar doesn't burn very hot, and it's smoke fine. Doesn't need relighting. But construction is, I would say, maybe, I don't know, 2 out of 10. It's very, very, very poor. What's my favorite non-alcohol drink to pair with cigar? Tea, 100%. I'm a massive tea nerd as well. So maybe one day I'm gonna. The problem with the teas, if I want to do a pairing with the tea, I need a bigger table, because I want the tea to be brewed, and I don't have that many um, pots to keep the tea hot. So I want to, if I want to do a different teas, I need to boil the tea later in the process with the life. I'm not sure I can do that, but maybe I can choose one tea for a cigar. I drink tea every day. I don't drink coffee, so coffee is not my thing. But tea, massive fan of Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese tea. Go crazy selection. I have more tea than whiskeys actually. So, but maybe I'll when I don't do the pairings like that, I can suggest tea. I can talk about the tea if there's an interest on the tea. I might try that next week. See if there's interest on the tea. I can start adding tea into the pairing just when I don't do a whiskey alcohol pairing way, because I can usually use few different drums and talk about them. With the tea will be more complicated, but one evening I can do it. So Adnan says Sahakian says the tea clears the palate and doesn't pair well. Ooh, depend. I mean, I don't argue with the Sahakians. Everyone is obliged to his opinion. But in my opinion, the coffee doesn't pair well with the tea, because the coffee literally cover your palate with the coffee, and it doesn't taste anything else. So for me, if I can clear my palate after every drink, I'll be literally, that's the best pairing. The more clean palate for me works better. I can taste the cigar better. Um, so again, if you don't want to clear your palate, then you fine with the coffee. Then you fine with the cocoa, chocolate, hot chocolate, whatever. Tea depends on the tea, of course. If you drink some old puree, very old puree, Chinese puree, that's very covering your palate as well. It doesn't clean your palate. I don't know how this can clean your palate. Um, if you're drinking, let's say, herbal type tea, maybe mint tea, chamomile, rose hip, yeah, that clean your palate lots. But getting for green teas, that doesn't clean that much. Yes, still not strong as a black tea. If you go for a black teas, no chance this cleaning your palate. Also, Rooibos is a reddish kind of tea, so it's not classed as a black. It's not classed as a green. Some of the rooibos are actually quite spicy. They don't clean your palate. They stay in your palate. So again, depends on the tea. Tea is so much varieties there. Also the type of the tea, the way it's boiled. If you boil it right, I mean, um, Lipton iced tea. Yeah, but that's not. I don't class that as a tea. It's like non-alcoholic fizzy drinks, not fizzy, like a juice. For me, it doesn't taste that much as even if you get the standard iced tea Lipton or maybe peach Lipton or whatever, it doesn't taste like a tea. It tastes more like a juice. So I don't class it as a tea. For me, tea need to be hot, need to be without any sugar. So I don't add any sugar into the tea. Need to be just the flavors of the tea. No adding milk. I'm not a big fan of the tea with milk. What the British people drink as a tea, for me it's nonsense. Why you adding milk in the tea? It's already tasty enough. You adding milk for what? I just don't get it. It's like a different drink. Anyway, topic number two from the news section. We're going to talk about one of my favorite brands when we're talking about raving and ranting and that kind of stuff. Davidoff. Davidoff released the revenue for 2024, which obviously 6 months after the 2024. They released that their revenue stays the same, pretty much flat in 2024 compared to 2023, but they produce 10 million cigars less. Ridiculous. I mean, Davidoff in 2023 claimed they produced about 49 million cigars. Last year they claimed produced 39 million cigars. So 10 million cigars less, and the revenue stays the same. So what's the first thing coming in your mind? Prices. Now you know why Davidoff is so expensive. Um, Obviously, as a big corporation, Nobody wants to lose money, especially those bigger guys. So they try to produce less, but keep the same uh, money coming into the company. I mean, very very successful example is the Habanos or Cuba Tobacco. People from Cuba produce less cigars every year, and they increase the revenue, the profit. So Davidoff are pretty much on the same level. Increase, keep the profit or the revenue the same, but reduce the production of the cigars significantly. I mean, 10 million is on 50 million, 10 million is a good percentage. This is was that 20%? No, yeah, on 50 million, 10 million is 10%, 20%. So they produce 20% less cigars, but they keep the same revenue. Not a lot of people can say that. I mean, I don't know many companies which can say the same thing, and they be okay with that. But we'll see. And this is all also showing that, in general, most of the cigar producing companies will produce less and less every year. I mean, maybe few of those will produce in more, but I don't know. I need to think which of the biggest companies selling more. I don't think it's a lots of information on that, but on top of my head, let's say the biggest companies, obviously STG, out of this, they purchase whole companies. I don't know if they actually selling more. I think the revenue from STG last month was a negative thing. Davidoff don't sell no, don't sell more than last year. Drew Estate, I don't think they sell more than before. Fuentes, same thing. Maybe Fuente will be the only one of the few of the bigger ones which maybe sell more, maybe no. Obviously, if we put Opus on the side, I don't think they sell more than before. Who else from the bigger companies? I don't think anyone I can see actually selling 10% more, 20% more than what they before. But there's not much information on most of those companies. So I'm not gonna go detailed on the Davidoff thing. We already have 40 minutes into the chat. I'm not even touched the second and the third whiskey. So today the life might be a little bit longer. Going to the another piece of news. This is very fun, but I want to mention it. So there was information that Nicaragua cuts the highway speed limit to 31 miles per hour. It's not much of a news for the tobacco, but actually it's a news for the cigars and the tobacco. So Nicaragua, because there's I've been in Nicaragua, and the whole country is crossed by the Pan American motorway, highway, which basically crosses the whole Americas from top to bottom, and the traffic is ridiculous. I mean, it takes us something like, I don't know, maybe 150 miles, 4 hours or something like that. And this is the main motorway, but they have so many accidents with so many people lose their lives, injuries and everything. So the government reduced the speed twice, and now they reduced it to 31 miles per hour. Imagine driving on a motorway with 31 miles per hour. This is ridiculous. How that will affect the cigars? I mean, don't be surprised if the Nicaraguan producers decide to increase the prices again, because they can claim the transportation will cost them much more because they need to drive slower. That costs more fuel, costs more time, not efficient. So there will be another excuse to increase the price, especially the people from Nicaragua, or maybe other who buy tobacco from Nicaragua also will be more expensive. So that's why it's connected to the cigar industry. I mean, even going to Esteli, because most of the flights lands in Managua to Esteli now will go to like 4 or 5 hours trip, which is ridiculous for the journey. But I guess that's happening when you have a dictator on the top of the country. He doesn't think rational. He just think how he's happy. Maybe this guy, the president, when he's been driven from with his chauffeur or his people, I don't think he follow the speedway limit. Probably he doesn't follow those rules. But there we go, dictatorship. Um, Last piece of news, I briefly talked about that last week. We even mentioned it earlier today. This will be the increase from the European Union, which came, I mentioned last week as a rumor. Now it's confirmed from the big medias. European Union discussing to increase all the tobacco prices, including the cigar prices, all based on weight. At the moment, the minimum European Union charge for tobacco duty is 12 euro per kilogram. There's a very few countries which follow that. Most of the countries already implement their own tax on top on that. All those countries which follow that one, if European Union increase to minimum 130, 140 euro per kilogram, every country will need to follow that as a minimum statement. So I don't think lots of countries will be affected. Some of them, yes, but Scandinavia won't be affected. Greece won't be affected. The Greece is quite expensive. Turkey, I think, is quite expensive. So some of the countries wouldn't be affected much. Even if it's affected, I don't think it will be more than, I don't know, 1-2 euro per cigar. Because that's the increases on the duty, not on the final price. Don't forget the final price have way more added stuff than the duty. It's not only the duty what we pay, because 100 euro, let's say 120 euro, if the cigar is 15, I don't know, 20 grams, they calculate it easy with 20 grams. That's about 2 euro on cigar. For a lot of people, 2 euro might be a lot, but for UK it's nothing. So 2 euro, and you don't know, I mean, 2 euro maybe for Andorra will be a lot because they don't have tobacco tax. They follow the bare minimum, but for in Scandinavia they probably already charge more than that for duty. So I don't think they will change much. But this is very unknown things. Which country, how many will use of that one? Again, if they already on over the minimum, the new minimum, they might not increase at all. Okay, I think is a time to talk about the second whiskey and what I have tonight for you. So the first one, I'll come back to the first one. What we have on the second one is a whiskey which I used to sell a lot. It was part of the company I was working before. One of my first bottles I bought back in the time from the company. So what we have in here, this is a Staladew. Staladew is independent cask bottling, and this one there's no name. They call it Truth to be Told because they're not allowed to use the name. We have, maybe I don't know if you can see, Speyside blended whiskey, blended malt. There we go. It's only 300 bottles ever made. Cask strength finished on 54.4. It's 22 years old, so that's why it's quite pricey. I think at the moment it's in a high end of about £300 a bottle. I pay significantly less for it when I work for the company. So blended malt, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is whiskey contain only single malt, only malted barley, but it's called blended malt. I mean, it's 22 years old. It's very expensive for 22 years old, but why is it expensive on this case? Because those guys take the cask. It's a single cask, so take the cask from Glenfiddich. Um, Obviously, 22 years old Glenfiddich is not a cheap whiskey. But Glenfiddich have a protection in their name, so you cannot use the name Glenfiddich on independent bottling unless it's obviously coming from Glenfiddich. So the only people who can use Glenfiddich is Glenfiddich, no one else. And also they have protection on the variety of the whiskey, so you cannot sell it as a single cask, independent bottle Glenfiddich. You need to be blended. And this whiskey is what is called very typically in the industry teaspoon whiskey. So what is a teaspoon whiskey? People like those guys get the cask. Obviously cannot use it as a single cask. They get a spoon, one spoon from another whiskey and put it in a cask. So you can imagine, I mean, one spoon in a cask of 300 liters, 200 liters is nothing. It's bare minimum. I mean, this is 309 bottles by 70 cl. What's that? 220 liters, something like that. I mean, you add 200 liters 1 teaspoon of something else. Even if you add what, I don't know, even if you add salt, probably you wouldn't taste it. But this is made because they're not allowed to sell it as a single malt, and that's why it's called blended. I mean, if you add even a single spoon of different distillery, it's a blended whiskey. You cannot sell it as a single malt. So in this case, they add 30 years old Balvenie into the whiskey, and the whiskey is blended. Even if it's like 99.990 whatever percent single malt, theoretically and by the books is not. So sometimes when you see something like that on the shelves, blended whiskey with a decent age, and the price is ridiculous, and is also released as independent bottling, most likely the possibility this is teaspoon whiskey is that they, again, small spoon of whiskey from different distillery, add it into the whole bottle. Very caramelly, lots of apples. Oh, and this is literally just a bourbon finish hogshead. It's a little bit sherry as well. Glenfiddich use sherry in most of their stuff. Color very very yellowish, banana yellowish, not pale but very light. Okay, the strength here now is kicking. Way more, obviously, from 46.6 we're going to 54.4. More spiciness. There's literally no nuttiness here. Lots of orchard fruits. Very typical for Glenfiddich. I don't know if you guys drink enough Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich is that green apples, orchard fruits, always. This is their like a signature. Every time you get Glenfiddich, you're gonna get these apples. Even if it's finishing some weird casking. Recently they start playing with experimental series and adding different finishes. Always those green apples are there. So with the cigar, now actually the cigar start getting a little bit bitter. This is with the combination with the whiskey. It's with the first whiskey I feel it way sweeter. Now the cigar going to a completely opposite way, more towards the bitterness. Not a massive fan of the second pairing. Again, this bitterness, it's a little bit too much. So after the cigar, the whiskey also, I mean, I taste that bitter. The combination between both is just this bitterness. So let me clean my palate with a little bit of water. There we go. The bitterness is not there now. Now the cigar is more roasty, like a toast, literally toast bread. Bitterness is almost not existent. But yeah, that whiskey, I don't think you work with this cigar, in my opinion. The first one was so nice, sublime. The second one, I don't think was super successful. So let me add a little bit about some cigars. Let me talk about a little bit about cigars, and then we're gonna go for the third and very weird pairing. But you'll see in a few minutes why. So, for my collection tonight, I have few cigars. I mean, I would say all of the cigars I'm going to talk about tonight, with one exception, are very small boutique brands, very unknown. Some of them not exist for decades. But what we're having tonight is a cigar brand de Crossier. I don't know if I pronounce it right. It's Flor de Crossier or de Crossier. I have two different examples of the cigar. The longer one is the older line. The other one is one of the new Pennsylvania broadleaf lines, which are massive one. So Flor de Crossier or de Crossier It's actually a brand owned by a Cuban guy who immigrated to the States about 15 years ago. At the beginning, he started making cigars in the, started sourcing tobacco and stuff. At the end, he found a partner in Costa Rica, and the cigars are made in Costa Rica. So, one of the few Costa Rican brands on the market. I think they still exist. I haven't seen them in ages on the shelves. I'm pretty sure in the US, Espinosa carry their distribution. The cigars are usually really nice. I like most of the Costa Rican cigars. Those are no exception. Those are decent. Don't expect crazy, um, super interesting cigar, but they're not bad, and I don't think they're expensive as well. I think in the States there was something under $8-9. Also, the core line they have, this one here, I think this one came in a jars, in a porcelain jars, like the typical Cuban cigars. This even the line, the Vitolo on this one is Hermoso number 2, um, which might be maybe coming after the Cuban lines, Cuban sizes. Um, yeah, it's a very smooth, very small boutique brand. I mean, just my cigar is getting ash everywhere. Honestly, guys, this is a not a cigar which I would probably recommend, but it's fine. So the cigars are quite boutique. I don't think you can find them on many other places, but there we go. The other brand I want to talk about, this is probably the most known brand nowadays from what I'm going to show you today. This is the Fat Bottom Betty, which is a cigar by Deadwood Tobacco and collaboration with Drew Estate. Sorry about my focusing skills. I don't think today, maybe. Nope, it's focusing on everything else but not on the cigar. But anyway, the Deadwood Tobacco, it's a shop in the US who basically decide to produce cigars with Drew Estate collaboration. Most of the cigars they're producing are quite infused, and they're sweet. They're very sweet. There we go. So personally, I'm not a massive fan of these cigars. I literally in the last few months I smoked the Robusto and the Toro from this one, and for me it's too sweet. It's basically sugar, sugar, sugar. But Drew Estate are well known for that one, so we shouldn't be much surprised at Drew Estate and the people there. I think there was some issues with the registration of the names in some point. Someone sued someone about some names. I don't think there's a much clarification what exactly happened there. I think those guys from Deadwood, or the people who own Deadwood now, decide to release cigar with different company. I think Aladino was involved there in Honduras. Um, Drew State obviously have some issue with that one. They sue each other or something. I don't know what was the outcome there. Honestly, I just don't. For me, flavored cigars, it shouldn't be put on the same topic as the normal cigars and any other handmade, hand rolled premium cigar. It's a little bit different infused product, especially if you infuse them with different juices, top it somewhere or sweetened or whatever. I mean, naturally sweeter. There's some tobaccos which are more sweeter than others. They're fine, but everything which is not naturally sweet, I don't think should be classed as a premium cigars. My opinion. Next one, it's a very, very, very old box. So I don't know if you can see. This is one of my vintage collection. It's called Delhi Kron. So Delhi, it's a region in Indonesia. So this one here was the most popular cigars, during the Second World War in Germany. They're classed as a soldier cigars and everything. Um, really nice and beautiful buns. I mean, I'm a big fan of the old school buns. I need to cover that one so you can see it. Um, you can see the size is like a perfecto. Most of the cigars from that time, usually that kind of short perfectos, like a ball pins. Obviously, the box is not full, of course. I need to try them. I've already smoked one of them. It's a box of 10. Um, So those ones, some Indonesian tobacco majority, Indonesian wrapper, which back in the time was very precious. Obviously, all the connections Germans and Dutch people have with Indonesia, they import lots of tobacco in that time, and those was the most popular during the Second World War. Interesting cigar. It's an old timepiece. So I don't have another question. Is it true that you really want to try a brand of cigar? The Robusto is the size, the best Vito? I don't know. Maybe the Robusto is the most excessive Vito, the most Vito which everyone usually have. I know most of the blenders, at least the old school blenders, they blend in Corona. Usually, when they blend the cigar, they make the Corona size as a blend, and then they work out. But my opinion that every cigar line, it's always best in a specific size. It might be the Robusto, it might be the Toro. No, you wouldn't know until you try them. So if you want to try cigars in Robusto, try them in Robusto. I usually try lots of cigars in different sizes. I mean, if you have the Toro, some cigars are produced only in Toro. I'll smoke the Toro. But for me, if a line masterpiece itself and says, "Oh, this is like a really good cigars," and everyone talk about, they should have slimmer gauges. And if I wanna try a cigar and say, "Okay, this is phenomenal blend or really good blend," I wanna smoke Lancero, Corona, and that kind of size. If they don't produce Lancero and Corona, they're good, possibly, probably, but something's missing. Um, the moment they release Lancero and the Lancero is good, for me this is complete blend now, and I have more respect for that brand. But I don't think there's a size, unified size, where you can tell this is the best size from all of them. No, it's all personal. People who smoke 16 gauges, I mean, they wouldn't go for Robusto. For them, Robusto will be not a cigar which they will pick. Anyway, so going for something from the same period, same region. Um, this is another German brand called Deutsche Arbeit. Those are not much information about them. I know they are older than the one before. There we go. The size. This is a 50 cab. I mean 50 box. There's not cab. Size is pretty much the same as the previous one, like a Perfecto ball peen. No bands on this one. Just nice cigars. Um, Lightweight. They're not very heavy. I smoke quite a lot of those. It's probably less than half of the box here. I keep smoking from time to time some of those. Again, not much information on this one. I presume they look pretty much the same as the previous one. I presume that's Sumatra wrapper, Indonesian tobacco, possibly Cuban fillers or Indonesian fillers. Back in the time, they used lots of those as well. Yeah, very old box as well. I would say circa 1930s, maybe 1940s, because of the price tag here. Yeah, not much information, but it's part of my collection. That's why I want to show it to you. Last piece of cigars last box of cigars I want to show you before we go for the final whiskey. It's something more common, not more common, more recent. So this is another German box called Deutsche Jagd. So this one here, the most popular cigars after the World War. So after the World War II, this brand became the main brand in Germany. They were using Sumatra wrapper or Brazilian wrapper, but in this case, it's a Sumatra wrapper. They all cellophane. Now you can see they all pre-V cut. Similar size, Perfecto ball pin. I don't think you can see it, but there's a lot of crystals under the cellophane. I don't know what's that. I mean, it might be mold. Who knows? I don't want to say more, but I don't think you'll see it on the camera because of the lights. But literally, there's a full of crystals all over the cigars, sparkle, and this is inside. It's not outside. But who knows what is that again? I'm not a scientist. I don't want to go diving into that topic again. So those ones here, I know for sure they're Indonesian wrappers, but they're Cuban fillers. You can find information about them. They use predominantly Cuban fillers, probably until maybe in the 90s, where the company was bought by a different company. They changed the blends and everything. I haven't smoked those ones. This is one of the few boxes which I haven't smoked yet. Um, Maybe one day I'll try them. I have only one box, 10 cigars, carton box. Obviously, after the war, Germany wasn't that rich, so they don't have money for wood. They use carton. Nice, nice buns as well. So, what's my favorite long format Vitola? I like them all. I'm a big fan of 7-inch Vitolas. For me, have the pure enjoyment, especially if you have time. Of course, you need time for that. Lancero, Lonsdale, Double Corona, Churchill. 7x70, not my type. I'm not much fan of 70 ring gauge, but let's say up to 50, 7-inch, perfect smoke for me. Over 7 is a little bit too boring. Most of the over 7 inches, for me, are getting one dimensional in some point. Most of the 9 inches, they're boring. But 7-inch, again, Lancero, Dahlia, Lonsdale type cigar, 43, 44 engage. Churchill, again, this is 747, 750, maybe 7.550 like double Coronas. I enjoy them as well. Very few brands making double Coronas nowadays. I mean, that's very, very few brands I can think of who make double Coronas, but that's the market probably. But Lancero, yes, please. And it's time for the final whiskey. So the conclusion so far, the first whiskey was really good. Second whiskey wasn't the best pairing for the cigar. It's good by itself, but not the best pairing for the cigar. And now the third one, it's why I said it's very unusual. So this is Isla blended whiskey. So Elements of Isla, it's owned by Elixir Distillers. Elixir Distillers is a company who do independent bottling, etc., etc. Every year they release 3 different releases of Elements of Isla, Sherry of Isla, Sherry release, port release, and bourbon. So I choose the bourbon because I think it's one of the probably the most crazy, unique whiskeys on the market. 54.5. So just 0.1% more than the previous one. Previous one was 54.4. This is 54.5. Obviously, Isle, I mean, it's Isle whiskey. It's peated. It's heavily peated. Whew. Even on the nose is such a medicinal hint. That's why I leave that for last. Because usually after peated whiskey, very rarely I can go for non-peated and drink after that non-peated. So I wonder if I'm going to drink peated to be the last one. So this is blend. Why is blend? It's blended by 2 different distilleries. They undisclose the distillery. They don't disclose the distillery, but let's say I know which distilleries are. That's Cahuilla and Lafroig. So we have the very oily, silky Cahuilla, and we have the heavily medicinal, smoky, ammonia Lafroig. So if you like Lafroig with a little bit of oil, this is your thing. No color, no chill filtration, very pale, obviously only bourbon, doesn't touch any sherry or anything. And the nose is whew, already TCP and lots of cough syrup. I mean, the people already start dropping off. I've seen only 5 people watching now, but maybe a few others will watch in the next few days. You see, when with the sip now, the cigar, I mean, the first impression in my mouth is orange, citrusy oranges. Not sure where that come from. The whiskey doesn't even the flavor profile on the whiskey, when you read it on the bottle, says cold smoke, tropical fruit, and maple syrup. I can get any of that, maybe a little bit of tropical fruit, but more of a citrus fruits. It doesn't taste bittery like the previous whiskey. The medicinal part is actually in the nose, not that much in the mouth. So maybe that's the Cahuilla part here. because if it was Lafroy, it would be very medicinal at all in the mouth. Kawila is not that medicinal in the mouth; it's more on the nose. So we have the nose. Mouth is not that peaty. There's a stone fruits, peaches. So the cigar is less leathery. Um, I don't feel this tarmacish, like earthiness at all. That's disappeared. I think that's probably because of the whiskey. The cigar maybe as well can be the reason because it's already past halfway. But I would say this is a good pairing with the cigar. Actually, I like this pairing. If you like peaty whiskey, again, this is not a typical whiskey blended whiskey. There's not many blended peated whiskeys. But yeah, those three whiskeys, a very good example of three completely different types of blended whiskeys from different regions, different aging, different finishes, different price. So the elements of Isla, I think, is around 50, 60 pounds, maybe 70. So we have 30, 40, we have 60, 70, and we have 250, 300, something like that at the moment. Or maybe even more. I haven't checked what's the recent price, if there's any bottle left. Different finishes, typical only bourbon, a little bit of sherry, and heavily sherry finished. Different alcohol percentage between 46 and 54. Yeah, I mean, the blended whiskey can be very enjoyable. If you wonder sometimes, should I buy blended whiskey? If you're not sure what to buy, I would say look for a higher percentage alcohol blended whiskeys. Or try to go over 46 if you find any. If not, 43 maybe. Some of the blended guys are 43%. That means they they chill filtrate a little bit. Maybe they add coloring. But going in the shelves on the shop, if you're not sure, go for the sweeter one. I will always say safer bet, go for the sherry stuff. Unless you don't like sweet at all, go for the higher percentage alcohol, and then just try and enjoy. Maybe it will be a good pairing, maybe no. Again, I don't know those whiskeys how they will pair tonight. For me, it was just experiment now. I haven't smoked the cigar before. I know the whiskeys very well, but I don't know the cigar. I don't have questions. When I choose a cigar in a box, how I determine which one to take? I usually take some of the boxes. They have like when you take in the first cigar, it's usually the one in the middle with some paper or something around, so you can take it easier. If there's no such a thing in the box, if it's a standard box of 10, let's say, if I'm gonna go with this box, I'll open them and I'll take the last cigar. I mean, my OCD ticking here. I mean, I usually take the last or the first. Depend. It's not a. It's just open. If it's boxed like that, I'll never go for the middle one. I'll look if there's any crack on the cigar. Sometimes you have a box, especially H box. You have some cigars with crack. Yeah, I'll smoke first the cracked ones. If all the cigars no cracks, no damage or anything, I'll go for the first or the last one, just because of the OCD, not for any other reason. Should I choose a darker leaf, veins? I mean, usually the cigars in the box should be the same color, same leaf, same colorness, same dark or white or light. Veins, I don't care much about veins, honestly. For me, not that important. Um, the veins doesn't mean anything. Maybe more flavor for some people, but I don't think that's the case. Right. I know we were discussing to do like a virtual smoke. This Saturday, unfortunately, I won't be able to do it. Um, Friday is I'm traveling, so I don't think this weekend. Maybe Sunday, but I have another thing in Sunday. So yeah, I don't think they will be show this Saturday live smoking Saturday. I've got family stuff to do. Maybe next Saturday. I don't want to promise 100%. I need to see what the plans for my next Saturday. But yeah, I mean, if any of you guys is so desperate to have a chat with me, smoke cigars with me, just shoot me a message. in the evening even I can, open some room somewhere and we can have a chat and smoke. I know I'm promising this for ages, but I just can't find the right time where I'm free for a couple hours and I can put the light on and smoke. So next week, Monday is what, 30th of June. If we're still here, if there's no bombs around or anything, because with the current situation, I don't know what's going to happen next week. It might be a war situation. Um, there will be a live. Definitely, I'm going to talk and smoke as well. I might do actually a tea pairing. We'll see what will be the, if people like the tea pairing, if they want more information about different teas. I can talk about teas as well. So yeah, actually, this will be a good option next week to do a tea pairing, and maybe in a few weeks I can do another spirit pairing with something where we talk about some regions or anything. So yeah, if any last questions, guys? I know it's only a few of us now. I don't think today was a very busy live. Maybe people doesn't like pairings, doesn't like that kind of stuff, but I appreciate you all. My final thoughts on the cigar. I mean, I'm gonna smoke for another 10-15 minutes probably, but my final thoughts on the cigar is not a cigar I want to smoke again. If I need to score out of 10, it's probably 4 or 5 out of 10. Not much of enjoyment on the cigar. This brand's continuing to be a brand which I wouldn't go for it. I don't want to spend my money on it. Doesn't matter how expensive or cheap. I think those are around $13 in the US, which is quite a lot for what they are. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna finish my cigar, and there we go. Someone already liking the tea pairings. Very well. Next week again, it won't be 3 or 4 different teas because I just don't have the option to heat the tea and be hot in the same time all the time. I mean, I need to use like flasks, and it's boiling like 4 liters of tea. I just don't want to waste my tea for like that because I'm not going to drink 4 liters of tea. So I'm going to make a nice cup of tea with some interesting tea, which I think will pair with the cigar what I'm going to choose next week. And I'm going to talk about this specific tea. Just a few mentioning. Maybe we'll drink the tea through the process of the cigar. I'm gonna have some flask with the tea, so it'll be hot all the time. So yeah, yeah. I think that's all for tonight, guys. Thank you very much for everyone who joined, participate. Lots of questions. I love that. And stay smoky. Smoke your cigars because tomorrow is never given. Especially with the situation in the Middle East now. We don't know how long those guys will carry on and what's going to happen there. Again, I don't want to get too political. I will see you hopefully next Monday. Same time, same channel. Let's Smoke with me. Will be episode 37. We're going to have a nice tea and a nice cigar, hopefully. Have a lovely night, and I'll see you all next week. Bye bye.